Hello, today I'll be doing a versus video. This time it'll be for two albums that are from two of the biggest names in the world of nu metal. So the albums are Saturday Night Wrist by Deftones and See You on the Other Side by Korn. So yeah, the reason I'm comparing these two albums today is because musically or stylistically in general, these albums feel fairly different from the albums that came before them from these bands. But also, these albums came out around a similar time. They both came out in the mid-2000s. With the Korn album, it was 2005. Then with Saturday Night Wrist, it was 2006. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's go ahead and start off with Saturday Night Wrist. So yeah, you can honestly make the argument that this is maybe their most experimental album. And also from things that I've heard, whether it be the making of the album or what was going on behind the scenes with the band, this was somewhat of a dark time in the band's history. But I still, even with all that, I think they still put out a fairly good album, I'd say. Maybe I'd say even pretty good. But with saying that, I wouldn't say it's one of their best. It would be in the lower half or the bottom half of their discography if I were to rank their albums. But even with saying that, I still think Deftones have never put out a bad album. And still, again, pretty good album, I'd say. And yes, I mean, the singles on here I think are really pretty good, especially Hole in the Earth and Main. But I think this album also has some pretty good deep cuts, or some of the lesser known songs on here I think are really good. I mean, Cheery Waves maybe one of my favorite Deftones songs. I definitely really dig Chino's vocals in that song especially. But you also have some songs on here that I feel are somewhat overlooked, somewhat underrated. To name some of those, Rapture, Beware, and Kim Dracula, easily, definitely one of their most underrated songs by far. I really like that song a lot, especially Chino's vocals, and musically in general, one of the more interesting songs in the second half, I'd say. If you like the heavier side of the band, you'll like Rats, Rats, Rats. Definitely a really great song. You also do have an instrumental on here, which is track number 6, which overall, I do like the instrumental. Not an instrumental that I reach for very often, but for what it is, I do overall like it. Now, you do have the infamous song on here, Pink Cell Phone, which, just based on things that I've heard from other people, other fans, this seems to be one of the weaker songs from the band in general, and I do agree with that. Not a great song, easily the worst song on the album, but with saying that, I've heard worse stuff, and it's not terrible, it's not god-awful, but it's easily one of their weakest songs that they've ever put out. But yeah, overall, again, actually a pretty good Deftones album. Again, not one of their best, but still fairly good album, I'd say. And for all the experimentation that they did on this album, I think overall, you got some pretty good stuff out of the album, especially with some highlights again like Hole in the Earth and Kim Dracula and Main. But let's go ahead and move on to See You on the Other Side. So yeah, with this album, you do get a producer change. This time with this album, they're working with The Matrix and Atticus Ross. Two people I'm not super familiar with. I mean, if you start naming off some of their other work or some of the other things that they've done, then maybe I'll start remembering some things. But yeah, overall, fairly different from their other albums. Still feels like Korn, I'd say, but still, you can tell musically in general, sounds fairly different from their other albums, especially again with the production. The tone of the guitar or the sound of the guitar I really dig with this album. Maybe one of my favorite aspects of the album, but I think this album has some really good singles on it, like Coming Undone, which is maybe the biggest song on here, definitely a banger, and also one of the first Korn songs I ever heard. Twisted Transistor, overall a pretty good album opener. Politics, definitely a banger, and when it comes to their singles, I think that's one of their more underrated singles. A song that's not talked about as much as some of their other singles, and same with the song Liar. I really like that song, one of the more anthemic songs on here. I really like that one a lot. But then you start moving towards the lesser known songs on here or some of the deep cuts. I really like Hypocrites, especially the guitar work in that one. For No One is another song that I dig. Souvenir is also really good. But yeah, I'll admit this album to me, or at least in my opinion, does have some filler. Not a lot of filler, but it does have some, maybe 2 or 3 songs in here that I think are somewhat kind of filler. But yeah, still, even with saying that, overall, fairly good Korn album. Never been one of my personal favorites from the band, but I do like it though. So if I had to choose which album I like more, I'm gonna have to go with Saturday Night Wrist by Deftones. So yeah, the reason I'm choosing this album is that when it comes to, so with these two albums, these bands experiment a little bit with these albums, and I think overall Deftones did a better job with the whole experimenting thing with this album. And on top of that, I think this album overall has stronger deep cuts, and I think the highs on this album are arguably maybe more impressive than the highs on this album, except for maybe a couple songs on here, potentially maybe. I mean, my mind on this could change at any time, but again, gotta go with Saturday Night Wrist by Deftones. But anyways, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me with my choice for this video, or do you prefer See You on the Other Side? Let me know if you have these albums on CD. Are you a fan of both bands or just one of the two bands, and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.